Hey guys, it's Julian, and today I am going to be showing you how to make dark Synth-y Techno like Introversion and Boston 168. As usual, you can get the full project file and samples and MIDI presets. Everything from this video is available right at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, let's dive in. So this is the loop you heard in the intro. We're at 132 BPM. This first sound that we have here is the stab, which sounds like this. So here's the MIDI for this. You can see it's really simple. The main thing with this one is just choosing like a few notes and then making it really repetitive. You know, when you're playing it like with the kick like that. So yeah, it's literally just three notes. We have C, and then we have the ninth of C, which is D, just two notes up, and then we have the minor third, which is three notes up, and that's D sharp. And then it's just this repetitive sort of hypnotic pattern. I think that's one of the biggest things, is like keeping that hypnotic feel to it, where like, you know, both Introversion and Boston 168, I think that's something you could really pick up from their tracks, is that it's not just like dun 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 dun, but it's something that's repeating constantly like this that you can kind of get lost in. Yeah, so for the sound with this one, it's made using two layers. We have the synth layer, and then the stab. So for the synth layer, it's made with analog. You can see we just have two saw waves. I've got the second one 2 octaves up. They're also being detuned a little bit, and then those are just going into a low pass filter with an envelope. That's how you get the pluck. We got the amp envelope set like that as well. And then finally, I just have a bit of vibrato. Actually, quite a bit of vibrato. You can hear that if I turn it up a little bit more. And then I've got the unison on. And then for the second layer, it's one of these old school sort of rave stabs. These are used a lot by these guys, but there's a little bit of a trick to it. You can see what I did here is I put a filter on it, and then I put an envelope on the filter. So we're actually making this like a pluck. There's without the filter. And then with it, so you can see we're able to make it kind of like very quick and plucky, so it'll fit with the synth. Versus if we turn the filter off, it just gets in the way. And if we have just the filter without the envelope, it's not quite the same thing. So yeah, and then those are just in an instrument rack, and then I have those going through a few different things here. The first thing is this echo. So you can see I've just got that on the ping pong setting. It just kind of gives it this wide stereo delay. Then we have this reverb, which is giving it some space. There's without that and with it. And then after that, I have this width rack. I actually have a video about this dropping later this week. But here's without this. And then with it, so it's spreading the sound out. And yeah, this is pretty important. A lot of times, like, techno is meant to work in mono. However, like, you still need to have a little bit of stereo width to your sounds. Because it's just going to be kind of off if you don't. And then the other thing is, like, even if it's a super wide sound and then it gets converted to mono when it's in the club, it's still going to sound bigger in mono if you have something like this on here versus if you just let it be. So yeah, we got that. And then finally, I just have this drum bus fattening this up a bit. There's without it. And then with it. And that is it for the stab. After that, we have the kick, which sounds like this. So this is a rumble kick, however, it's made a little bit differently. So what this is we're starting with this kick. I'll turn off all of the effects. So like a pretty standard sort of hard 909 style techno kick. And so usually to make a rumble, you know, you would turn on the rumble, you know, maybe a little bit of processing at the end. with this kick, there's an extra step we need to do to kind of make it a bit more of this like darker kick. Like you hear this in a lot of Introversion tracks, you hear this in a lot of Boston 168 tracks, definitely like in Call to Adventure by Introversion, excuse me, brain fart there. It's this type of a kick where it's not just like this kick, but there's a little bit more to it to give it that kind of a hit. So what we're doing here is we're distorting it using this pedal and then filtering it. So this is typically how actually a lot of techno kicks are made from scratch. Like a lot of times when I make a kick from scratch, sort of like just to get the punch to hit really hard, this is what I'll do, is you just put it through a bit of this distortion. Or overdrive, I guess you could say. You know, not a whole lot, but you can see just a little bit like this. I'll turn it off. And then turn it on. Like, it really just brings out that low end and gives you a deeper kick. And then you just low pass it and you get that like kind of kick. And yeah, like I said, I hear this in a lot of these guys' tracks. Like, it's not just your standard rumble kick. There's a little bit of an extra step to it with this. This is also very similar to the kick used in a lot of Fioc tracks as well. Like, they'll use this. It's just good whenever you don't want just, like, that standard, like, main room techno kick, but you still want, like, a nice, big, rumbling kick. So, yeah. Again, you just distort it with some kind of, like, usually, like, a lot of people like to use guitar pedals for whatever reason. Like, you know, something like this where it's meant to be, like, a distortion for a guitar. It just tends to work really well on these 909 style kicks. And then the low pass. And yeah, and then I'll turn on. Then there's with the drum bus. You can see it does get a little bit crunchy. But mostly it's just giving us the deep, fat low end that we want. So the crunch doesn't really matter. But yeah, and then we have the rumble. So yeah, this is a pretty standard rumble chain. You can see we have this dry chain. And then the rumble where it's just a reverb going into an amp. And then we just low pass that so that we're getting just the rumble there. And then I have a compressor which is sidechaining it to this kick, as well as cutting at 100 hertz to make a bit of room for the kick to punch through. And then after the rumble, we just have a bit of drum bus. Just fattens the kick up a little and kind of makes these two come together a bit more and makes the bass line and the kick kind of sound like one. Here's without it. And then with it. And yeah, that's how you make this sort of like deeper techno kick. Again, it's kind of similar to your standard techno kick, but there's that extra step that if you don't get, it's going to be kind of weird. And yeah, after that we have this pad, which sounds like this. So you can hear how that's playing off of the stab. This is just meant to be sort of like a background melodic element, you know, something a little bit more ethereal. I think this is what a lot of these guys do very well, is like, especially Introversion and Boston 168 and a lot of the other producers and DJs in the style, is like kind of combining more aggressive techno with a more ethereal and kind of spacey sound. So that's the idea of this. It's like we have this really hard aggressive track, but then you bring this in, and it brings in something a little bit more delicate. So with this one, for the notes, all it is it's just going D, so the root note, A sharp, and then A. So we have the root note, A, which is the fifth, and then we have this A sharp, which is just one note up from the fifth. And then you just have that sort of playing off with the stab. This way you have like the stab moving around really quickly, but this thing just kind of staying in one place. And then for the sound on this one, it's just this operator pad. So what I did here is I've got two sine waves, you can see. And then I have them just doing a bit of FM. They're both in the same octave. I've got them detuned a little bit. And then I have those going into this LFO here, where the LFO, the filter's not really doing anything, but the LFO is just on here moving the volume of oscillator B. So it's just sort of warping around a little bit, giving it some movement. You can hear that like kind of stuff. And yeah, then we have just the reverb, just gives it some space, you know, makes it a lot more ethereal and kind of washed out. You can hear some of those notes ringing out into the other notes, which I think sounds really nicely. Or sounds really nice in this style. And yeah, then we have this auto pan. This is just meant to give it this quarter note sort of pump. It sounds like it's being sidechained to the kick, but we can't just sidechain it to that kick because it's never going to come back up because the kick is just constantly playing. So that's what the pad. That's why we put that auto pan on there. Because that's making it sort of bounce up. And then finally, we just have a high pass filter, cutting out the low end, making sure that it's not going to get in the way of the kick. And then that's it for the pad. And then the last thing we have here are the hi-hats, which sound like this. So what's going on is it's 3 layers. We have this one, and then this one over top of it. And then this one. So I'll go with this first one. This one here is made using a synth. So what it is I took operator and just got some white noise. You can see we shortened the envelope here, and then I put it through this filter, which is a bandpass. And then what's happening here is I have the LFO moving the filter really quickly like this. You can see I have it on this S and H setting. So it stands for sample and hold. And what that really means is essentially it's just kind of random. Like it's just bouncing around all over. And yeah, so you can hear, you know, it just creates this really cool, sort of like a live hi-hat sound. Is this something I've heard a lot in Boston 168's music? Like, they like to use these kind of hi-hats where it's kind of morphing. And I like to do this too. I think it's really good for techno because it's like, it kind of goes back to what I was saying about the stab. It's like you have this long, repetitive thing. So rather than like changing the notes or changing the pattern, if you can change things about the sound over time and have it kind of morphing and evolving like this, I think it's going to make it a lot more exciting. And yeah, and then I just have a bit of drum bus on that, just kind of makes it a little bit less like a dry synth and more like a percussion sound. And yeah, and then after that we have this open hi-hat. So you can hear this one just in there adding like some extra little percussive notes, like this little in between. Like that. This is just this sample. Gotta go into a bit of reverb, a bit of saturation. And then the last one we have here is this open hi-hat, which sounds like this. So this is your standard sort of 909 hi-hat. Here is with no processing. And then with the processing. So you can see, we're starting just with a nice, like, fat hi-hat sample. I've got it with a little bit of an attack on here, so it's more of like a instead of just right at the start. And yeah, and then we have this reverb here, which you can see I've got the pre-delay up a bunch, and then I've got it really short, so it's kind of like, you know, like it almost sounds like the reverb is bouncing off of the hi-hat, and that's what I was going for. And then we just have this overdrive and drum bus. So here's without these. So you can see the overdrive just does a bit of kind of like fattening. It's a great technique. I haven't really shown this in videos before, but overdrive, especially Ableton's overdrive, actually is a good way to fatten your sounds up. Like, you don't have to just use the saturator. You can really just go for like a straight overdrive like this. It's going to make a nice difference. Again, without it. And then with it, so you can hear it's really giving it that intensity and that fullness that it needs. And then the drum bus here, which you can see is set pretty hard. That's also just making it hit really hard. And yeah, so that's how you get one of these kind of hi-hats to really sit like on top of your mix like this. It's just by making sure that it's as fat and as full as it can be. And yeah, and then on the group of hi-hats, we just have a bit of saturation. So here's without it. I'm there with it. So subtle, but just gives it a little bit more fullness. Kind of glues them together a bit. And yeah, so that is it for the hi-hats, and that's also going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. You can get this full project file and samples and MIDI presets, everything from this video. It's available right at the top of the description for just $5 on my Bandcamp. It's a great way to support me if you guys have been enjoying these videos. And yeah, thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.